Hey, welcome to Agri Talk, and today is a special one because we have our man in the field, who is Duane Rigsby, and he's with the crew of South Centers at the OSU South Centers in Piketon, and I guess today they're planting Paw Paws. So we will figure out what's a Paw Paw, because it's sort of a regional thing, and what they are doing and how they're studying Paw Paws. So welcome to the show, and welcome, Duane.
Hi, Mike. How are you today?
We're doing great. It is
good.
second week of June, and we're doing
Somewhere around in there.
Yeah, first or second week.
All I can tell you, it's a beautiful day right now. It's not 100 degrees, and these guys are out here digging holes and planting trees.
Okay, so a Paw Paw is a tree. Is it a big tree or a small tree?
Well, I'm going to bring in the expert as of right now, Thom Harker. He's a research assistant here at the center, and we're going to decide about all these. But as nature, a Paw Paw tree is pretty good size out in the woods.
Okay.
So the question, and this is Thom Harker. Thom, welcome. Hello. Is the tree that we're planting, is it like a miniature tree, or is it going to be a 30-foot or 40-foot tree?
These trees could get that big, Duane. However, after they reach probably 10 feet, I think is our plan, we're going to cut the central leader out of them so they will quit growing at that point. That way there'll be a shorter tree for ease of harvest, and we'll make it more of a bushy tree probably versus tall.
Okay. So you cut the center main trunk out and then leave the branches.
Yeah, well, you'll always have a growing point on any plant, so we'll cut that growing point out after it reaches a determined height, and then that way it won't grow any taller.
How long does it take before you will harvest fruit off of that?
I believe it'll be 3 or 4 years by the time we get our first crop.
Okay, where do you get Paw Paws? Did you raise them from seeds or what?
All of these we've gotten from nurseries across the country. Some of them have come out of Indiana. Others have come out of the West Coast over in Oregon or Washington.
Okay, I guess this is kind of a specialty thing because you just can't get Paw Paws everywhere, can you?
They are a difficult tree to run down, especially in the numbers that we're looking for in planting this 1-acre orchard here at our research farm. So
what kind of conditions do Paw Paw trees like? Do they like a full sun, or do they like other trees around them, or what they like?
Traditionally, a Paw Paw is an understory tree, so you find them in the woods, in the shadows of the larger trees. So most of these have been conditioned to be in the sun that we're planting today. However, we have about 75 trees that we're going to have to shade this first year. So we'll be building a shade structure around each individual tree at our trial for the first year.
Okay, and hopefully they get used to it?
Yeah, we'll condition them to the sun. Then next year we'll take the shade cloth off.
Okay. How big are the trees you're planting? Are they like a foot tall or what?
Well, we have different sizes, with the shortest being about like this here. So I'm gonna guess that's approximately a foot. And then we have the tallest probably, being a couple feet here to maybe 3 feet is the tallest that we're planting today.
Okay. Do they like water or dry ground?
Pardon?
Do they like a wet soil, or do they like a dry ground?
They don't want a wet foot, no. So what we're doing here with our research, we got some beds that are raised up to keep them out of the water, and then some of them are planted on just bare ground to compare the two, which ones will produce better and grow better Paw Paws over the course of time.
Okay, because I know there are certain trees that like drier, and some that grow next to creeks, and they like different type of areas like that.
Right. Yeah, we don't want them to be in wet. They don't prefer wet feet or wet roots.
Right. So what do you use Paw Paws for?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people, there's a high demand right now with the craft brewing industry. A lot of the brewers are wanting Paw Paws for Paw Paw beer,
Hmm.
as well as a lot of people. I guess there's a big demand as well for the fresh fruit aspect as well in the larger cities.
Have you eaten a Paw Paw?
Many years ago, they kind of remind you of a banana as far as the texture goes.
Okay.
Taste, not quite like a banana.
Are they a sweet thing, or I don't know if it,
Not particularly sweet, no. I about like maybe a banana taste, I guess. Not overly sweet.
okay.
And you have to get them at that right at that right texture, or they're real sour.
Right,
You know.
right.
So,
How do you tell
It's
if
a
one
very-
is ready to pick?
how do you know if one is ready to pick?
They would be. You kind of look at. They start off green, but they kind of the color changes a little bit. They'll still be green, but then they have a soft texture or mushy texture to them, just like a banana.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't ever tried one. I've got to do that sometime. I don't know if it's around Athens or not. We got a Paw Paw Festival in Ohio, and there's probably one in West Virginia, but it's sort of an Appalachian thing, I think, right?
I know across the state of Ohio, I believe Paw Paws are pretty well native through most of Ohio. I think as you go down south, they're not as quite as predominant in the southern states as they are in more the Midwest, northern states.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about freezing and all that.
No.
So they like cooler, I guess, under the canopy type environment.
Right, they like the shade. They don't like the full sun, but they can be conditioned to be grown in the full sun.
Do you think that'll affect the fruit at all?
That I don't know. I can't answer that. I would assume no. A lot of our varieties are grafted, and I believe those have been more bred towards being in the sunlight, larger, sweeter fruit, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, Mike, we can describe what grafting is to the group. Tom, this isn't a tree that you just grew from a seed, right?
Correct.
It comes from multiples, I guess. If you
Right.
would.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, it's hard. It may be hard to see here, but it's sort of like a two-tree structure. They're grabbing one right here to try to show us.
Okay, I know it's going to probably be hard to see, but if you look at this potted plant, we have a rootstock, which is still a pawpaw tree, but it's more of, say, a native tree to Indiana, Ohio, and it has a good, strong root to it, but maybe the fruit is not as wanted as the other fruit. So what they do is they will cut the top of that tree off, so you just got the roots, and then they will cut the second tree, which is the wanted tree, and then graft the two together. And right here, as you can see on this plant, is the graft union of the two plants.
Is that hard to do? It just seemed like that would, take or not take. Does that?
It's a special skill. Some people are better than others, and it can be difficult. It's not a super hard process, but if you don't get the graft done right, they do not take successfully.
Yeah. Do you know how to do that?
It's been 20-something years ago since I done it, and that was in college. But I'm guessing I'm going to get to learn because we have 100 trees here and 100 trees in Columbus that we're going to graft.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had to treat it with a special chemical or some growth hormone or anything to make that work.
No, it's just you just join the two together and you'll wrap them with some grafting bands and hope they take.
Okay. Just getting it in the right spot probably helps.
Right, just getting a good union where they join together, and weather conditions will make a difference as well.
So in planting them, what you're doing in full sun, how far apart are you putting them? Are you like a little grove or just lines, and how far apart would you be?
Right, we have our rows. Our rows are spaced 15 feet apart, and then in the row, our trees are 10 feet apart in the row.
Is that what
Mike,
we're seeing behind you?
You see a little bit in the background. of the rows that they've laid out in plastic. And that's the darker, looks like a black, just looks like black plastic probably from the camera.
Right.
And then there's going to be some that's on bare dirt, right,
Yep.
Tom?
Yep.
And they're out there planting right now, as you might be able to hopefully see the group out there planting. And how many trees are we going to plant, Tom?
We're gonna have 300 here at this site, and then there's 300 at Columbus that were planted a week ago.
And they're like matching sets, right?
Right,
So we kind of tell a little bit of climate difference and stuff too.
right.
Yeah, so that was
And-
going to be my next question is, okay, it's a research facility. So is there like a control group? And if there's other things that you're doing to compare ways of planning or locations or anything, what are the variables that you're putting into this, if any?
Okay, we have, right now we have planting today, we have 12 different varieties. And then we're also planting more that are just one variety that are rootstock that next year we're going to graft into. So eventually there's going to be 27 different varieties of trees here after we get done grafting the ones next year. So there's different treatments there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have what we're calling high and low input. So the high input is on a raised bed to help keep the roots out of the water. And they're also covered in that fabric that Duane was talking about, as well as they're going to have irrigation water to them. And then the low input is just bare ground, flat, and we'll use irrigation just in this establishment to make sure we get them established, but then the irrigation will be taken away from them, and they'll only get whatever Mother Nature provides in the future.
Okay, and you said there's 20-some varieties? I thought Paw Paw was a Paw Paw. I guess not.
Well, like anything in the wild, you have your Paw Paw that's a Paw Paw, but then, all these different universities and different people have bred new varieties of them over the course of time, just like with apple trees or your peach trees.
So, of the fruit, would you say it's like the size of a pear?
The wild ones, I could say, yeah, they're maybe a pear size or maybe a little smaller in the wild, but I have not seen the ones like the grafted varieties, but from what I've been told, they're a much larger fruit than what you'll find in the wild.
Okay. So what would the expected price, do you go by pound or per Paw Paw? What would you
They are
expect?
sold by the pound, and I was at a Paw Paw Growers of Ohio conference there a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lady out of North Carolina there speaking, and at that time she was telling us she sold her Paw Paws at, I believe it was $8 or $9 a pound, whether she was selling them to be eaten or to the craft brewery industry.
So that's a little bit better than apples, isn't it?
I believe so. That seems to be a higher dollar than what apples are bringing.
Yeah,
It's probably more of a specialty fruit that is harder to come across.
yeah. I don't think I've ever seen it in a store anywhere. Have you?
I personally have not. I do know there's some places in Columbus that are looking for them and want to buy them when they're in season.
Yeah. What would be this? When would they be ready? It's the same time like apples would be ready, or what?
Yeah, it's in the fall. I'm trying to think offhand. I want to say September.
September,
Roughly.
October?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be that these new varieties that they're planting, that they may offset a little. That some may be a little bit earlier than some of the others. So I think all that is yet to be determined.
Right.
With all of this research. So we got to stay tuned for. We may be getting a Paw Paw that tastes like a strawberry. Who knows? So
That would be cool. Strawberries as big as your head or something. That'd be all right.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And as you were talking about pricing, obviously, if we can get more farmers and stuff to raise these or orchards, obviously, that'll probably drive the price down a little. But you know, who knows?
Right. Let's see.
Mike, you know, as far as we go now, that's, you know, that's what we've got. I think we can stay tuned for our next thing that we're going to be planning. You know, we might be out here in the field again, either looking at how the Paw Paws are doing, or Tom, you said we have some other planning that's going on. Brian Slaughter, what will he be planning tomorrow?
We'll be planting hardy kiwi, as well as primocane bearing black raspberries, and then just your also some new different type varieties of thornless blackberries.
How do are kiwis good for this climate here?
I know some people's tried to grow them. I'm not real familiar with them. It's not a kiwi like you're used to seeing in the grocery store, though. It's a kiwi that's more the size of a grape is what a hardy kiwi is. And I do know that they're supposedly able to be grown in this climate. They're kind of a viney type plant that'll grow on a trellis. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure what that was either. I know what a kiwi is, but
yeah, sure this will, I think, will be all different than what you're used to seeing, though, that green one out of the store.
Yeah.
But Mike, maybe our next broadcast, maybe from the field, as I'm looking across, I see our hops planting. There's plants that are already being trained that's going up the field. And I'll give you a little glimpse. If we look back behind me, you should see that.
Yeah.
Might be a little hard. Maybe that'll be our next thing we can shoot from the field. So until then, Mike, I'm going to let you go from here.
Okay.
And appreciate everybody for watching, and we'll see everybody again.
Hey, Brian Slaughter here again at OSU South Centers in Piketon, Ohio. I'm standing here at a blueberry planting, and just want to talk to you real quick about our fertigation system. Oftentimes we have a lot of people ask how we fertilize our blueberry plants. What we do is what's called fertigation. So basically we have an irrigation system where we run our water through these hoses here that you can see. They have emitters spaced every 36 inches that release little droplets of water. So we'll run that 4 to 6 hours a day, maybe once a week, twice a week, depending on the weather, to water the beds, water the plants. But this is also the system where we deliver our fertilizer through. So we use a water-soluble fertilizer for blueberries. We use ammonium sulfate, so that has sulfur in it, which also helps maintain the lower pH in the soil that the blueberries like, and then the correct nitrogen form that blueberries like. I'm going to walk over here and show you our system that we have for injecting the fertilizer. This is called a mix-right chemicalizer. So the way it works, we have it plumbed into our main water system, which runs underground. So in a normal watering system, we would turn the main valve on and these secondary valves off to water the system. When we want to fertilize, we turn the main lines off and turn these secondary valves on. And you can see these hoses that are attached into that system. So the water comes up through this first hose here, through this system, and as the water pressure moves through the system, there's a little piston in here that draws up the fertilizer out of the stock tank that we'll bring in. And then injects it into this line and then pull it throughout the main system for the plants. So this hose here is what gets sucked down into the stock tank with the fertilizer. We just use a 5-gallon bucket that we've mixed up the slurry in. And we'll set it down inside here so it's lower than the system, and just let that all get sucked up into the system. So we'll do that. We'll pump all that fertilizer through, and then we'll run the system for another 20-30 minutes so that it gets all those fertilizers flushed out and into the ground where the plants and the roots can take all that out. So if you have any more questions, you can reach me, Brian Slaughter, slaughter.71@osu.edu, or you can call OSU South Centers or check out our website, southcenters.osu.edu. Thanks a lot.
Okay. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on Agri Talk.
Suicide is one of the leading causes of death for young people, but it doesn't have to be.
She was new and seemed like she was having a hard time fitting in.
I really don't remember her being involved in anything.
He took the breakup really hard.
Things weren't the same after she failed the test.
He worried a lot about disappointing his family.
He started having a hard time when his parents separated.
People were always picking on him and calling him names.
She started sitting by herself and didn't talk much to others.
She started to miss school a lot.
Every time I saw him by his locker, he looked like he had been crying.
I noticed that she posted weird messages on social media like, "Soon this will all be over."
I knew something was up when he gave away his grandpa's watch. He had always told me how much he loved it.
I was worried about him because he wasn't as talkative and kind of moody.
And I started to notice that he would quit talking to his friends and he isolated himself from all of his groups that he was in.
She said she wished she could go to sleep and not wake up.
She said she was tired of feeling lonely.
She told me that she felt hopeless about pulling her grades up.
He said he wished he could disappear so he would not be a burden to his family.
He told me I didn't have to worry about him after break.
I thought about standing up for him finally, but I didn't want to become their next victim.
I wanted to know if he was thinking about suicide, but I didn't know what to say if he said yes.
I did wonder if I was making too big of a deal about it. I didn't want to offend her.
I knew someone in the past who had attempted suicide too. I didn't want to risk it.
Even though I didn't know what to do, I knew I had to do something because I was worried about him.
I thought about inviting her to play basketball, but I figured someone else already did, so I didn't.
I was always taught to mind my own business. Everyone has a rough time at school, right?
I kept thinking, what if it were me? I'd want a friend to do something. So I shared problems that I had in the past and asked him if he felt comfortable talking to a teacher.
So I asked him, "Are you thinking about suicide?" The more we talked, the more concern he shared for his safety, so we agreed to talk to the guidance counselor.
I didn't want to be the one to blame if something happened, so I asked her if she was having suicidal thoughts. She said yes, so I called the crisis line and got advice on how to help.
I would rather have her mad at me than dead, or even hurt.
So I walked up and said I'm sorry and offered to spend the rest of the afternoon with him so we could talk.
I thought to myself I'd feel better knowing I did something. We talked about who could be helpful for extra support for them and decided to call their family and tell them what's been going on.
So I went to my coach and started to ask how I could help.
At River Valley, we take care of each other.
At River Valley, we look out for each other.
At River Valley, we're a team.
Once a Raider, always a Raider.
At Galley Academy, we support each other.
At Galley Academy, we never walk alone.
Once a devil, always a devil.
At South Gaia, we believe in each other.
At South Gaia, we're a family.
Once a rebel, always a rebel.
There are things you can do to identify problems and help someone in need.
Recognize when they are having thoughts of suicide and respond. Warning signs for suicide can be verbal cues of feeling hopeless, helpless, or trapped, withdrawal, isolation, change in mood or sleep patterns, substance abuse, alcohol and other drugs, giving away important possessions, looking for and obtaining necessary items, and talking about death or dying.
Take action or get others involved. Ask directly about suicide. Express concern. Listen with empathy and no judgment. Remind them help is available. Remind them they're not alone.
Make a referral to a mental health professional, guidance counselor, or community resource.
In this community, we're all in this together.